Today I'm joined by Rex Minerals Managing Director Richard Laufmann. Rex has enjoyed some buoyant share price activity in recent times, and given that Rex has the Hillside Copper Project in South Australia, which is fully approved and ready for development, and with the copper price enjoying new record highs, it's a great opportunity to focus on that all-important base metal with a Rex Minerals Copper Special. So Richard, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be with you, Alex. Thanks very much.
Richard, copper, or Dr. Copper, is often seen as a bellwether for the state of the global economy, or in this case, the prospects of economic recovery. Copper has lifted from record lows to a 7-year high of over US $3.50 a pound. Is copper a reliable bellwether, and what, in your view, has driven this price resurgence?
Sure. Well, look, let's be in no doubt, copper is a bit of a bellwether, and it's referred to as Dr. Copper, but largely because it's a proxy for development. You can't develop planet Earth without copper. And specifically, you can't take people out of poverty without copper. So it's been instrumental in pivoting the global economy out of subsistence farming to development and taking people out of poverty. It has had a very clear role for a long time. And remember, this was before Elon Musk was born. So electric vehicles didn't even play a role in copper's importance. But where we sit today, we have limited supply, a very slow supply response. It takes decades to approve mines, right? And you have a growing demand. You know, limited supply, slow supply response equals oh dear, right? We're in this space now. The elastic band's been bending for a long time. We are in the next commodity super cycle, but copper is not just a base metal, right? It has a much more important role than that, and it's got a much more important role moving forward, right? Copper is also not just a battery metal, right? It doesn't matter if you produce energy, if you distribute energy, or if you utilize energy. If you're going to decarbonize the planet, you're going to electrify everything, and copper is fundamental to each single part of that electrification process. So copper's always had an important place globally as a bellwether, as Dr. Copper, but that mantle is being replaced now, and it's being moved up the curve. People have to pay attention to copper, because without it, we won't be able to electrify everything. And just as a nice little add-on, given COVID-19 has slapped the world around this year, right? It's almost criminal that hospitals and public venues don't have all of their door handles and taps coated in copper, because it annihilates infectious diseases, right? And it alone could make a big difference to the sanity of humanity. So look, discovery to approval takes decades. We don't have decades to join the ship. Copper's got a big role to play, and it's growing bigger all the time.
Now, Rex has two assets you describe as company makers. I'd like to focus on Hillside Copper Gold Project in South Australia, if I can. With copper reaching the incentive price needed to bring new projects online and significant global supply shortages that have been forecast, the stars appear to be aligning for Hillside, which is one of Australia's largest undeveloped open-pit copper mineral resources. In your view, what makes Hillside such a unique opportunity for Rex?
Yeah, well, look, thank you. And first of all, yes, we do have two company makers. We've got copper, Hillside, South Australia, gold, Hog Ranch in Nevada, two great places to be. And don't forget gold, because that's your protection against central bankers printing endless amounts of money. So it's also an important commodity. But Hillside in South Australia was first discovered in 2008. And it was an exciting discovery. It's part of the Gawler Craton, part of that system that goes to make up Olympic Dam, Prominent Hill, Carrapateena in South Australia on the Yorke Peninsula. We got our mining license in 2014, and we finally got our environmental permits and approvals in the form of our PEPA issued to us at the end of July in 2020, so middle of COVID lockdown. But let me just map out what we have here. We have discovered a 2 million tonne copper resource sitting at or near surface in a part of the world that is loaded with potential for copper, that already has the infrastructure of highways, power system, people, townships, ports, all laid out for it. We don't have to build that. If you're discovering something outback Western Australia, you might have to add billions to your capital bill to build this thing. We're supported by the infrastructure of South Australia. So it's in a great location with access to great people. This is really important if you're going to build a project. It's going to operate in a very good cost profile, $1.38 in the lower half of the cost curve. And it's going to operate in stage 1 only for 13 years. Stage 2 would be another 13 years. There's potentially a stage 3 and 4 after that. That makes it a multi-generational project, employing circa 500 people. It's important as a national asset, as a state asset, and it's important to the people of the region, right, as well as to the world, because we're going to be producing copper. It also has a lot of really neat, innovative, freebie bolt-on bits, like the fact that South Australia is the only state in Australia that already has more than 50% of the grid supplied by renewable energy. If you just cast your mind forward to the first renewal of the mining fleet, we will probably deploy hydrogen trucks. So as a mine, it will produce its zero carbon footprint into the future, producing the very metal we require to decarbonise the world. So that makes it a super important asset for all Australians and certainly for REX shareholders. And that's just touching on some of its fun facts.
Well, we might be able to expand on more of that if you can. Can you just run me through some of the key metrics that make Hillside such an attractive asset?
Sure. So we began with a feasibility study for a larger project, actually, that had iron ore included in it. And we cut that when the copper price collapsed back to a 500,000 tonne reserve. So we have a reserve of 500,000 tonne from a resource of 2 million tonne, right? So that's only a quarter of the mine life of the resource. So that's stage 1 of the project will operate at $1.38. Copper today is like $3.70. So there's a lot of headroom, cash margin in that price of copper, right, for it to make money. It's all in sustaining costs, sit around $1.60. So you can see that's a robust project, to develop. And we'll be producing about 35,000 tonne of copper per annum and thereabouts 35,000 ounces of gold per annum from the project, putting it in sealed containers and trucking it around to Port Adelaide, right, on the infrastructure that's already laid out there. So fantastic project, $410 million US total upfront capital build. Which gives it a very low capital intensity. It's just another metric, another measure to look at is, are we using our resources on planet Earth wisely, or are we, spending a lot to develop what we're going to do? So that makes Hillside a bit of an orphan globally. It's actually discovered, it's actually permitted, it's actually ready to go. It produces great metrics. It's got at least double, if not 3 times or 4 times the inbuilt brownfields expansion potential without even going off the mining lease, which is already approved. And sitting in the tailings dam at the end of its first 13 or 14-year mine life is 12 million tonne of iron ore. And the iron ore price today is $170 a tonne. That's sitting in the tailings dam. Stage 2 will put another 12 million tonne of iron ore into the tailings dam, ready for someone one day. There is billions and billions of value in an iron ore sitting in the tailings dam for, another phase of the project. And we're in South Australia, as I said to you before. So, I could talk all day about the metrics of the project, but it's got a lot to complement it.
Richard, you've touched on REX's excellent regional footprint on the Yorke Peninsula and life beyond stage 1 at Hillside. Can you elaborate on this exploration upside and what's your game plan to test these additional copper targets?
Sure. So we haven't conducted any exploration, but Rex was an explorer. It went to South Australia, where, by the way, you won't find BHP or Rio exploring out there. They don't take those sorts of risks, okay? It takes a smaller company with vision to do that. Rex did that and made a big discovery. But at the same time, we've already identified some fantastic opportunities in the exploration portfolio. We've already got one drill hole from near surface at 30 to 40 metres at 0.6% into another target, right? We have some fantastic geophysical targets, and we have the dominant land position on the Yorke Peninsula. And it is a great place to be because, unlike where Olympic Dam and Carrapateena exist, in that northern section of the Gawler, you're sitting under nearly 0.5 kilometre of cover before you get to your ore bodies. That's why Prominent Hill had to invest billions to develop down to the start of the ore body at Carrapateena, and Western Mining and BHP had to do the same to get to Olympic Dam. We're at near surface, near free dig too, so we don't have to blast as we start. Right, the material at surface is very diggable. So the project's got a lot of advantages, and we can see that extrapolating over the region in an exploration setting. It's not as hard to test these exploration targets because you're not trying to look through 0.5 kilometre of cover to find it. That in itself is a story I could spend half an hour on, is talking to you about the exploration upside. So I'll just leave it at that, except to say what a great place to be.
And to close out, Richard, Rex is obviously in the enviable position of having exposure to both gold and copper through its 2 world-class projects. It certainly appears that 2021 is shaping up as an exciting year for Rex. Can you just leave us with a summary of your work plans for this year? And what are some of the key catalysts that investors should be keeping an eye out for as activity ramps up?
Sure. Well, look, an immediate and clear objective is to secure financing. And that in itself is an interesting thing at the moment. Governments are printing cash. We read about it every day. You can't believe the amount of money they're printing. What we need is for that money to make it to the right resting place, okay? So there needs to be some commitment, it doesn't matter what your politics are, right, from all governments to get that money where it's going to do some long-term good into long-term infrastructure and development style projects. Right, we need to rebuild Australia. We need to rebuild it fast. We need to back ourselves in. We've got good, strong local banks. APRA, get out the way, right? Let these banks lend to resource projects like this and turn the dial up on what made us great in the first place. This is a great place to be. We've got the best people and the best location, and we're endowed with the resources that belong to all Australians. Let's get behind that and make it happen. I see an enormous role for governments, state and federal, as well as the bankers, to get behind projects and move them once they've done the work, right? You got to do the work. We've put in 15 years of hard yards. We've got the approvals. We've got the environmental sign off, but now we've got to get behind this and develop it, and we've got to finance it, right? We don't have decades to dick around. Now's the time. Let's seize the moment and go Australia. Let's make Australia great.
Fantastic. Look, Richard, I really appreciate you joining me today. All the best for 2021 and everything that brings for yourself and Rex Minerals. And again, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.